Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the coolest aspects of Jujutsu Infinite, the domain expansions. If you've been playing the game, you know how crucial these are for both PvP and PvE. Each innate technique comes with its own domain expansion, and trust me, some of these are absolute game changers. With so many to choose from, figuring out which ones are worth your time can be a bit tricky, but don't worry, we've got you covered. In this video, we're going to break down the best domain expansions in the game and help you figure out which ones are worth unlocking. Now, I know the grind for unlocking these can be tough, but trust me, it's so worth it once you see the power these domain expansions unleash. Some can turn the tide of battle with just a single move, and others, well, they can give you that extra edge to dominate in those tougher fights. So sit back, relax, and let's go over which domain expansions you should focus on if you want to become a true master in Jujutsu Infinite. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking domain expansions in Jujutsu Infinite. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The domain expansions in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Deadly Sentencing and Horizon of the Captivating Skanda. Alright, let's dive into some of the domain expansions in Jujutsu Infinite, and let's start with something a bit quirky. First up, we have Deadly Sentencing, from the Judgment Domain expansion. Now, I'll be honest, this one is like playing a game of rock, paper, scissors with your life on the line. If you win, congratulations! You get the Executioner's Sword, turning your M1 into a powerhouse that can pretty much guarantee a kill. But if you lose, well, you don't get wrecked, just some defensive and speed buffs, which aren't terrible, but they're not exactly game changers either. And if you tie, well, you remove your opponent's curse technique entirely, which is kind of fun, but also a little wild. In short, it's a fun gamble, but don't expect it to be your go-to move for reliability. Now, let's talk about Horizon of the Captivating Skanda, which comes from the Hydrokinesis domain expansion. First off, it's a pretty cool concept. Your opponent gets hit with the wet debuff, slowing them down and making their attacks weaker. Pretty solid, right? But wait, it gets even better. You can use Death Swarm inside the domain, summoning a bunch of fish that slam into your opponent, dealing bleed and stacking on more wetness. It's a super flashy and unique visual, but in terms of actual utility, it's not exactly going to blow you away. You're better off using other domains for practical damage output and pressure. But here's the thing. Jujutsu Infinite doesn't always reward you for being practical. Sometimes it's about style, fun, and, well, embracing that feeling of rolling the dice. Deadly Sentencing is definitely one of those domains where the thrill of chance can make a fight feel a lot more exciting, if you can handle the gamble. That Executioner's Sword? When you get it, it feels like you're holding a piece of your opponent's fate in your hands. At the end of the day, both of these domains are in the C tier for a reason. They're not bad, but they're not the heavy hitters either. Deadly Sentencing leans into its gamble vibe, while Horizon of the Captivating Skanda focuses on debuffing your opponent with the fishy flair of the Death Swarm. Are they fun to use? Totally. Are they going to win you every match? Probably not. But hey, sometimes it's all about the fun, right? The domain expansions in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Coffin of the Iron Mountain, Malevolent Shrine, and Self-Embodiment of Perfection. Alright. Let's talk about some of the domain expansions in Jujutsu Infinite that fall into the B tier. These aren't the best of the best, but they definitely have their uses, especially in the right situations. Some might even surprise you when used strategically, though they aren't the top picks for every player. So, grab your cursed energy, and let's dive in. First up, we've got the Coffin of the Iron Mountain from the Volcano domain expansion. Now, this one's got a lot going for it. It deals fire damage over time to anything caught inside, and it leaves behind magma puddles that deal some hefty AoE fire damage. Sounds pretty awesome, right? The problem is, while the damage is solid, it's pretty easy to dodge and maneuver around those puddles, especially in PvP. It's not the most reliable in one-on-one combat, but for PvE, it's a solid choice. Just use it when you're swarming enemies and need that extra control over the battlefield. Next, we've got the Malevolent Shrine from the Demon Vessel domain expansion. This one's a bit of a mixed bag. What you're dealing with here is an endless stream of slashes that last for a long period of time. The damage per slash isn't that huge, but it just keeps coming. It's like the never-ending story of damage. Except, less fun. Because the damage is so spread out, it's fantastic for PvE, where enemies aren't constantly dodging. But when you bring it into PvP, the constant damage might not be enough to really make a difference in a fast-paced battle. Still, it's a good choice for grinding through waves of enemies. Now, let's talk about self-embodiment of perfection from the Soul Manipulation Domain expansion. This one's unique because your attacks place stackable orbs on your opponents. The more orbs you stack, the stronger your Soul Touch skill gets, dealing massive damage. Sounds powerful, right? Well, there's a catch. You need to stack those orbs quickly, and that can be easier said than done. It's got potential in both PvP and PvE, but it lacks the immediate, overwhelming power that other domain expansions higher on this list bring. If you can stack those orbs effectively, though, it can be a pretty solid option. Speaking of stacking, that's where Coffin of the Iron Mountain really shines. If you're the type of player who likes to control space, laying down those fire puddles and forcing your opponents into awkward positions can be a game changer. In PvE, it's almost like having a constant hazard on the field. But in PvP, as I mentioned, players can just jump around your puddles, making it less effective in high-speed combat. Still, if you're up against slower or less mobile enemies, it can really shine. Malevolent Shrine, though, that one's like the set-it-and-forget-it type of deal. You lay it down, and the damage just keeps on ticking. It's not flashy, and it's not going to win you any quick duels, but it can be a reliable, steady source of damage. If you're up against waves of enemies or need some extra pressure, it can be a good choice. Just be prepared to be outpaced in more competitive settings. Finally, the self-embodiment of perfection really does have some potential if you're a player who knows how to stack and time your attacks. It's not a pick-and-win sort of domain expansion, but with the right pacing, it can really pay off. The stackable orb mechanic means you need to be patient and methodical. You won't blow your enemies away in seconds, but you'll get there eventually, and it'll be satisfying once those big hits land. So, while none of these domain expansions are going to be your go-to for dominating in PvP, they all have their charm and can be absolutely solid in the right hands. Whether you're dealing with swarms of enemies or just need some extra control over the field, each of these can hold their own. Just remember, it's all about the right situation, the right timing, and maybe a little bit of luck. The domain expansions in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Idle Death Gamble, Unequivocal Love, and Unlimited Void. Alright, let's talk about some of the most interesting domain expansions in Jujutsu Infinite that really spice things up. Now, you know that feeling when you get into a battle and everything just clicks, like you're in control? Well, some domain expansions give you that feeling, but with a bit of a twist. Let's start with Idle Death Gamble, a domain that does not mess around. What's cool about Idle Death Gamble is that it's the only domain expansion you can use immediately. No need to build up a meter or wait around. You pop it and bam, you're inside, ready to roll. Inside the domain, you get to fill up your fever meter, which gives you infinite RCT, making you basically immortal. And as if that wasn't enough, your skills have a reduced cooldown. This makes you a tank in PvP. You can just go full force, never worry about dying, and keep hammering away with your abilities. Sure, it's a bit less effective in PvE, but if you're in the thick of PvP, it's like having an ace up your sleeve. Next up, let's chat about Unequivocal Love. Now, this one is a bit of a gamble, pun intended, because the RNG, random number generator, is at play here. When you activate this domain, you get 2 katanas, each with its own unique moveset. But the catch is, the katanas you roll are random. You could get a really solid combo, or you could end up with something less than ideal. But that randomness adds a layer of unpredictability to the fight. In PvP, that unpredictability is a huge advantage. In PvE, though, it's a bit trickier. You might get caught in a bad roll, leaving you open. Still, with the right RNG, it's a beast in the right hands. Now, let's talk about Unlimited Void, or as I like to call it, the stun machine of domain expansions. This one used to be crazy overpowered. The previous version let you completely shut down your opponent, and you could even kill them while they were stunned in the domain expansion. That was a little too much, right? Well, after a nerf, you can no longer finish the job while they're trapped, but it's still strong. Stunning your opponent for such a long time gives you the perfect window to stack skills and take control of the match. In PvP, it can still be a game changer, but for PvE, it's not as useful with the nerf. But let's be real, these domain expansions are all about how you use them. Idle Death Gamble shines when you're in a tough spot and just want to keep pushing through. With its ability to make you invincible, you can dive right into the fight and not have to worry about taking a hit. Meanwhile, Unequivocal Love is perfect if you like to gamble a bit and enjoy the randomness of the katanas, hoping for that lucky roll to turn the tide in your favor. And don't forget about Unlimited Void. It's the perfect tool if you love making sure your opponent is stuck in place while you get your shots in. So, how do these domains stack up against each other? Well, for PvP, Idle Death Gamble takes the crown with its pure tankiness and non-stop offensive power. If you're feeling lucky, Unequivocal Love is a lot of fun, with its high-risk, high-reward potential. And if you're all about shutting down your opponent and playing it safe, Unlimited Void is still a strong pick. No matter which domain expansion you're using, it all comes down to how you play. Pick your poison and may the best domain win. The domain expansions in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Celestial Opera. Let's dive into one of the absolute game changers in Jujutsu Infinite. Celestial Opera, or as we like to call it, the ultimate PvP powerhouse. When you activate the Star Rage domain expansion, you're not just getting a flashy display, you're unlocking a permanent mass meter refill. That's right, your meter doesn't run dry during the domain, so you can unleash that insane damage without ever worrying about running out of juice. It's like having an endless buffet of power ready to be served up at your opponent's expense. If you're someone who loves to dominate in PvP, this expansion is basically your ticket to a one-way trip to the top. And the fun doesn't stop there. Celestial Opera isn't just about raw damage. The AoE potential is ridiculous. Whether you're blasting through mobs in PvE or laying waste to unsuspecting players in PvP, the massive area of effect makes sure no one escapes your grasp. The combination of high damage and AoE coverage makes this domain expansion incredibly versatile, and it's a go-to for anyone looking to turn the tide in any battle. Whether you're playing casually or aiming for the big leagues, Celestial Opera is definitely a must-have in your arsenal. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.